Do you believe someone can lose 200 pounds just by eating meat? In this interview, you will learn how Richard went from this to transforming into this. If you watch to the end, you will discover how he overcomes stress eating, his experience with long-term fasting, and how the Carnivore Diet helped him shed 200 pounds. He also shares the mindset that kept him on track at the end of the video. So enjoy.
40 days is pretty long.
You did that for 40 days?
Yeah. Like if you asked me this question 2 years ago, I wouldn't have a clue. So 40% of everything is false. It's wrong.
This interview is conducted on the unceded traditional territories of Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh. And today we have Richard Evans. Richard, how are you?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. I'm so thrilled that you're here because your story was so inspiring when I saw it online, and I just thought, oh, I have to talk to you about this. You lost 200 pounds.
The thing about me being heavy is I never knew why.
Oh, really?
I thought, oh, I don't eat too much, right?
Oh.
Like I never ate excessively, right? I mean, I blamed it on the beer, right? Or something like that, right? The thing is, I was so carb heavy. This is what I figured out. Like if you asked me this question 2 years ago, I wouldn't have a clue. I'd be like, the only way you can lose weight is by starving yourself to death, right? I would exactly be that way. But I've sort of figured out that carbs, like bread, pasta, croissants, and I would have a donut. I mean, I always thought I took it easy, right? Like I didn't have donuts every day, but I'd have them once a week, right? And, but I would have bread with every single meal, right? And I would eat 3 meals a day. And I was hungry a lot, right? I wasn't big on the candies, but I had candy bars occasionally, right? Not every day. So I always looked at my thing and I said, I don't know why I'm heavy, right? I mean, I was like 400 pounds at one point.
At one point, so 400 was your peak.
I think about that. I remember this.
Were you exercising?
I was married at the time. Well, no, I mean, every job I've ever had has just been the brain, using my brain to do things, right? Doing engineering work, doing electrical work, doing problem solving and all that sort of thing, right? So I've never really had a job where I've had to walk outdoors, I'm just sitting at a desk all the time, right? I would have no clue about why I was heavy, right? But I mean, but I think now it's the carbs, right? It's the bread every day. It's the pasta every day, right? Like I'd sit down for a big bowl, of spaghetti. I'd see other people eat big bowls of spaghetti. They didn't gain weight, right?
Okay.
And the other thing I've learned is that every body is completely unique, right? Completely unique. People are so much different than I ever imagined. Like I always thought human beings was a human being, period, right? And it's not true, right? It's not true. People have huge variations in the medicines they take, the reactions to fruit and vegetables. Like for whatever reason, carbs really put weight on me, right? And other people, carbs don't put weight on that. And I had my older brother, right? I mean, we're the same DNA, but I would watch him eat. He would sit down and he would eat 4 times the amount of food I would eat. And he was skinny as a rail. Skinny as a rail.
Is that the twin brother you're talking about?
No. It's my older brother, right?
Okay.
The oldest brother, right?
Okay.
My other brother, he was a lot more like me, right? He would, I'm sure that guy was 600 pounds at some point, right? Like when my main nationality or whatever is Icelandic.
Okay.
I mean, half Icelandic, half British, right? So the thing, I've never been to Iceland. I've never met any of these people. I mean, they have visited a few times, but we would see family photos of people in Iceland.
Yeah.
They look like me, and they all weighed 400 pounds. And I went, well, there you go. There's the genetics right there, right? But this is Iceland.
We're big for a reason.
This is Iceland, right? Like I thought they'd be eating fish all day or something like that, right? And like I say, I did have a brother, and he was more Icelandic than me, and he was skinny as a rail. My sister's skinny as a rail too, right? My twin sister. My other sister's heavier. My mom was heavy. My dad was skinny. So yeah. So then I just realized, and I guess the thing with medicine, the way they practice medicine is they take 100,000 people or 10,000 people, they do one thing to them, they feed them something, and then they look at the results, and then they just say, okay, out of these 100,000 people, X% of them this happens to it, right? And then they just say, okay, here's what you need to eat, right? But the thing is, they did it for 1,000 people, but 200 of them did a different thing, and the other 200 did a different thing. So it's at most 60%, right?
Yeah.
So 40% of everything is false. It's wrong. So you're literally, when they look you in the face and tell you to do something, that's only applying to perhaps as little as 50% of the people. So you got a 50-50 chance of actually that situation being applicable to you, right?
And there are too many variables, and plus a lot of clinical studies usually were done in a very limited amount of time, because the clinical study, they want let you do like a 10 years follow-up.
I'm not even getting into all the other faults. I'm just telling you that my emphasis here is every person is an individual, right?
Yeah.
So you need to figure out what it is. You know
Let's talk about you, because it sounds like you had a good job, you're eating well, and you weren't consciously aware that you were getting bigger. So when did that change?
Well, I think when
you were 400 pounds, did you feel you were?
It was a stress. It was stress.
Okay, so it was
I had just gotten married, and I think my wife was feeding me more fat and more carbs than I'm used to, right?
All the delicious
but
stuff.
also we had moved to the United States, and because the job opportunity was just fantastic, right? And I said, I want to move to the States anyways, right? But my wife hated it, so she was freaking out 7 days a week, right? And I was dealing with a whole new work environment, and the U.S. is a whole nother ballgame, right?
Yeah.
Like, in Canada here, like I was pretty successful at work. I was, probably the top 10% of everything that I did. And I get to the United States and I look at the guys and I'm like, oh my God, every one of these guys is 10 times smarter than me. I'm doomed. I'm doomed. Because it's just the way it is over there. They're fucking geniuses.
They do have a much larger population than we do.
So, so there's that stress. So you got to work a lot harder than you're used to. And then I'm newly married, and then the wife wasn't happy with the situation, right? And that was the very first type of situation. That was living in the U.S.
Okay.
Like I thought we had agreed upon it, right? Because we wanted to buy a house. I mean, that was like 2000, 1998, 2000 sort of thing. Plus I had a baby as well, right?
Okay.
So there's a lot going on. Yeah. And that was the very first time that I was told I had high blood pressure, right? Okay. And and I had to take high blood pressure.
Do you remember how old were you?
I would have been about 40. Okay. So 40 was the very first time that I really had a problem with my weight, right? Okay. Like I never really hit more than 250. 250 is kind of heavy. I'm 250 now, right? Okay.
And was that the time where when you hit 400?
It would have been at least that, yeah. Well, what I got to say about hitting 400 is scales only read up to 330 pounds.
Okay, and then what happened?
And then it just says error. Right. So you don't know what you weigh, right? Right? Not unless you and there's it's very hard to find a scale that weighs above 330 pounds, right? Unless you're in the doctor's office, right? Then they got those big slider things. Right? Oh, yeah. And that's where you get into the doctor's office and you hit it and you're like, oh my God, I'm at 400. I'm higher than this, 420. It's crazy, right? Wow. So, so I hit that. I don't think I lost that weight for a long time, right? Because then I went through a divorce a couple of years later. So it was a complete nightmare. But yeah, it was all stress. I mean, I've gained weight twice. Excessively, right? Okay. And both times we got to do with stressful situations, right? So, I think there's, I found out now that there's cortisol or something, and that does it. But, probably being stressed, you're probably overeating as well. You know what I mean?
So would you consider yourself as the stress eater type?
No, I'm just completely subconscious. I just don't have a clue. I just have no clue. I had no clue I was gaining weight. Like when I look in the mirror, I do not see a heavy person. Even when I weighed 400 pounds, I see this beautiful man at 16 years old. You know what I mean? I see myself at 16 years old. I do not see a heavy guy. I'll see a photograph of me and I'll go, who's that fat guy? I won't even know.
You're actually pretty okay with how you look when you're looking in the mirror.
Yeah, I have no issues. Like I say, I look like I'm 16 years old in the mirror, right? I just do. Even to this day, you know? I mean, I've been trying to figure out how... I'm trying to think, well, that can't be a good thing. So, I mean, I got to get a more realistic expectation, of what I look like here, But yeah, and the same thing with eating. Like I could never figure out why I'm gaining weight. You know what I mean? And I mean, the only way I've ever lost weight, like when I ended up getting the divorce in Seattle, then then we went to Toronto, and I was single again, right? And then at that point, you know how it is. Anybody who's ever become single again just says, "Uh-oh, I better like lose some weight." I don't care what I weigh.
So was that the first time you started trying to
That was the
weight?
first time I'd ever actually tried to lose weight. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not really because of the health issue. It was because you were single again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've never, like, the thing is, I've never felt unhealthy. I've never felt bad, right? I've never been out of breath. I've never had trouble climbing stairs. I mean, I carry the weight very well.
Yeah.
I don't even feel the high blood pressure. I don't feel any of that, right?
Okay.
But, I mean, when I hit those 400 pounds, I did feel it. But if I'm 300 pounds, I don't feel it, right? And I look in the mirror and I look fine, right? But then I'm like, gee, I look at a picture of myself and I'm like, oh, I better do something. So again, it's don't eat and hit the gym, right? And the thing about hitting the gym, I figured out is if you want to lose weight, you can't just go and like walk on the treadmill or bike on the bicycle, right? You got to go like gangbusters, right? You got to sweat, and those machines that usually give you the calories you burn, the mile an hour you burn, or anything else, or anything. You better just be peak, right? And you got to do it for 40 minutes.
Well,
right?
at least that's
what I mean?
what all the weight loss videos you'll find on YouTube. They're basically telling you sweat as much as you can. You got to keep up with cardio. You got to train
if your heart rate isn't practically bursting out of your body for 40 minutes, you're not doing anything, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously you need to walk. I mean, if you're like, I don't think you need to exercise very vigorously if you're maintaining a very healthy diet, right? And I'll talk about what I think a healthy diet is, and you can take it or leave it, right?
But did that type of exercise work for you?
That works for me very well, right?
That did? Okay.
Yeah, that heavy-duty exercise works for me, right? Because I tried to lose weight. I said, okay, I'll get to the gym. I'll hit, 20% or 30%. I'll just move and exercise, and I'll just, because I think at that level, the mental health is, feel better. You know what I mean? Like it's a great stress relief, but it doesn't do a thing for your weight. The diet, right, is 80% of weight loss. And exercise is 20%, right? I mean, the thing is, if you want the exercise to be more than 20%, then you got to do what I said, which is like just burn like crazy, go every single day, do an hour of like heart rate at 100%, for an hour. That's the only way it'll do it. But I'm not saying that you need to do that. Like if you eat properly and keep your stress down and sleep, then you just need to walk and just do your daily thing and eat properly, and you'll be muscular and everything, right? You will be.
Walk me through the process, because that was not part of your daily routines. How did you incorporate those exercise activities, into your daily chores? Almost. How often do you go to?
I mean, at the time though, when you're divorced, you're just single, so like you go to work and then you're off work, and then you don't have to do anything until 8 o'clock the next morning, right? Okay. So I would just get in a routine of going to the gym, right? So I just go every day, right?
Every day.
Every day, yeah. Well, I mean, I think 7 days. I think 7 days a week, right?
Were you ever tired to the point where you're like, I just don't want to do this?
Like I say, I've never had a problem with my energy or anything like that, right? I mean, I've always been, I'm never tired, or anything like that, right? So I just, so this is the thing. Like I got no feedback. I mean, I'm never hungry, ever. For a long time. I mean, I guess at one point, I remember I would have breakfast or a late breakfast, and then, if I brought my lunch to work, I'd eat it at 10 a.m. Right? You know what I mean, sort of thing.
Did you have a very specific weight loss goal that you're striving for at that time? Let's say some people really want to I'm just going to stick with this number, and then I will go down to like 180 pounds. That's my final goal.
I just thought I'd do it until I look good. Like I never weighed myself. I mean, it's just look in the mirror, right? That was the whole thing. I mean, look, I was in very good shape until I was like 25 years old, right?
How was it different though? Because you never had a problem about your image, even when you were bigger, when you're looking at the
Yeah, I know. I never made any difference.
What would draw the distinction or the difference between the two?
I mean, I guess I was, everything I've ever done is like, well, I should have a girlfriend, right? That's about it. So if I'm in the mood for a girlfriend, then I put the effort in, right?
Okay.
I make sure I have a good job. I make sure I have a nice car. I make sure I'm in shape, right? That sort of thing, right? And then, I get a girlfriend and I'm perfectly happy, right? I probably put on 100 pounds and then lose the girlfriend and starts all over again. Something like that.
So the weight loss itself is not really the means to the end, but it's more about getting into a relationship again.
It is now because like I say, I'm typically I'm not hungry. Typically I'm not tired. Typically I feel great. Mentally I'm fine. Everything's fine, right? And I have a girlfriend, and I have an apartment, and I have a car, and I have a job, and everything's great. So like that is my gauge if I'm doing well. You know what I mean? Like it's like I don't necessarily worry about my body image or anything like that because I'm just a big guy. You know what I mean? If anybody gives me a bad time, I'll just knock them down or something. Something.
Don't do that.
Something like that. I'm also a funny guy, so I can always charm them into submission. But then when you get older, right? So now I'm 64 now, right? So
64.
Yeah, 64 now.
I didn't know that. You're good for your age.
Yeah. So, the thing is that I remember I had trouble, like I was in my 40s when I got divorced. I remember having trouble losing the weight, right? This is why I had to do the intense exercise.
What type of trouble?
Well, because eating less was not causing me to lose weight, right? So, and exercising nothing was causing me to lose weight, right? Just nothing.
But you were going to gym every day.
Well, and this is what I ended up doing, right? At the end of the day, I just ended up not eating and going to the gym and exercising like a maniac, right? So losing weight was a lot tougher. I think the divorce thing was so devastating that you can get so stressed out that you just, literally shrivel to death, right? You know what I mean?
Some people, when they're facing stressful situation, they tend to eat more to compensate that, the anxiousness, the anxiety, the discomfort. But in your situation, it's different.
Well, food doesn't give me a buzz or anything, right? Like I think people sometimes eat food to get a buzz or something. You know what I mean? Like it must make them sleepy, or it must give them a high, or something, right?
So were you not eating at all at that time? Or not like completely.
Yeah. I mean, I was consciously not eating. You know what I mean? Trying not to eat. I mean, I would fast.
Let's talk about your fasting technique. What were you doing at that?
I mean, at that time, I didn't know very much about health, right? Like I just thought, fasting is healthy. So the longer you fast, the healthier you're going to be.
How long are we talking about? Like 12 hours?
No, I've learned a lot more about fasting now. No, I did a 30-day fast or a 40-day fast or something like that. No.
And what does that entail?
That entails drinking just water for 40 days. Yeah, no food. Yeah.
Just water?
Just water. No food. But I can tell you what happens, though. Not good.
I'm not thinking about that kind of
not
fasting.
Good.
I was thinking about you still eat vegetables and fruits, but
no, traditional fast, which is just water,
just liquid.
Yeah, and 40 days is pretty long.
You did that for 40 days?
Yeah, and again, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about fasting.
Okay.
Right? And like I say, I don't really have a lot of hunger signal. You know what I mean? Typically, anyway. So it's not like I feel deprived, right? And I don't feel tired or lose energy. And I was always a heavy guy, so I had lots of fat. So probably if you're heavy, you could probably do 40 days without food. I wouldn't do it now, right? I wouldn't do more than 7 days now, right? But but anyways, I remember at that fast, at the end of the 40 days when I decided to break it, I did feel lousy. At some point, I did finally feel lousy. And I went to the gym, I was exercising, right? You know what I mean? So I must have been sweating out electrolytes, all sorts of stuff. I was probably this close to death at the end of the day, come to think of it, right? And I went on to one of those machines that measures your heart rate. And the heart rate thing is jumping up and down all over the place. It turns out I fasted myself into atrial fibrillation. So it was not a good thing. I didn't know at the time, but then I broke my fast quickly after that. I said, I don't know what's going on here, but I feel terrible, right?
Were you hospitalized?
No. I was perfectly fine, right? Okay. I mean, just thank God I didn't think, 40 days is good. Let me do 80 days, it was crazy stuff like that, right? I think I just learned more about nutrition and stuff, you know what I mean? Like when I was 50. thing, right?
Okay.
It started occurring to me that vitamins and minerals, not that I didn't know about them, you know what I mean?
But it's more like learning by doing.
I just thought, well, we stored up a lot of these things, or these things, you know, like if you're heavy, you know, everything you need to sustain yourself is in your body. But it's not true. You need vitamins, you need minerals, you know, you need those sort of things. And, you know, and if you become deficient in some minerals and some vitamins, then certain, you know, your body will shut down a system in order to save another system, sort of thing, right?
So
you know?
is that the time when you realized that fasting system wasn't working out?
No, 40-day fast weren't working out, right? Yeah. You know, 3-day fast is still good, right?
Okay.
Or a 7-day fast is still good. But, you know, 40 days is just ridiculous, right? And I mean, I think the main thing is learning about, again, bread, sugar, ice cream, you know, anything with sugar in it, right? Like bread is just basic. Like when people say starch, the word starch just means a long sugar molecule. That's all that means. And sugar just means a short sugar molecule. That's all it means, right? Okay. So you have long sugar molecules and you have short. So starch is long sugar molecules and starch and sugar is short, right? That's it. So I didn't realize that, right? I thought starch was fiber. You know, that's the sort of thing. I thought, oh, I'll eat bread because then I'll get my fiber, you know? But little did I know that I'm basically, you know, when you eat, you know, half a loaf of bread, you're basically eating a cup of sugar. And I would ask doctors for advice on losing weight, you know, and they, oh, you know, eat lots of vegetables, you know, sort of thing, right? They haven't got a freaking clue.
How did you discover carnivore is actually your way?
This is the latest thing, right?
Okay.
This is the latest thing. So I guess, I mean, I had a health emergency when I was 60, right? That was before COVID.
Okay.
And it was just a situation where there was some personal issues and I started drinking and not eating. This is the thing, right? Because when you drink, you don't get hungry, right?
Right.
And I just didn't. Again, I just didn't put 2 and 2 together, you know. So I'd have, you know, I'd get home and I'd have like literally, I'll just have 26 ounces of vodka, right? You know. So I ended up in the hospital and they measured your blood, all my number, like all the potassium, you know, 0. Acid, you know, there's an acid level off the charts, you know. So then I said, oh my God, you know, I said, you know what? I went through a really bad state there. I've had my pity party. You know, I said, I'm going to fix everything. That was when I was 60. So I said, okay, 1 meal a day seems to be the way to go. But I wasn't doing carnivore. I was just, you know, I would just eat, you know, eggs or, you know, something fairly nutritious. Like I'd make a stew or a soup. Everything was homemade at that point, right? Okay. Yeah, so I'd like have some baked potatoes or something along those lines, you know. And basically eating, you know, 800 calories a day for 3 years, you lose weight. I mean, there's just no way you're not going to lose weight, right? But it was very, very slow. I think it was about a pound a week.
Okay.
Something like that. So it was like 52 weeks in a year. So, you know, I was 400 pounds or whatever it was. And after an entire year of losing weight, I see a picture of myself and I'm like, I'm still fat. You know, I look, it's still crazy. I didn't look skinny by any chance. I don't know if I could tell. I mean, I had a picture of me 2 years ago, right? And I looked at it and I went, this is me 2 years into losing weight. I've lost 100 pounds. I'm still huge, you know.
The experience that you stayed in the hospital was the trigger point.
It was a trigger, yeah.
But what kept you going for 3 years?
I almost killed myself, right? Basically. So if I had one thing to focus on, right, you know, it's going to be my, as far as my health goes, it's my weight. So I said, okay, I'll lose weight, but I won't do it unhealthy, right? And I'll do it slowly. Because normally, what I did last time, I went on a 40-day fast, right? And practically, you know,
that's very extreme. You went on one side of a podium.
Well, this is just losing weight fast. It doesn't work. It's not good. It's not healthy. I'm just going to not eat as much. And that was the only motivation for me, right?
So you mentioned you ate 1 meal a day. Did you discover that yourself?
I figured that out on my own. And then later on, I discovered it, right? Like that, I discovered later on that, oh, there's 1 meal a day. They had a word for it, OMAD.
I am going to challenge that because when I'm, you know, nowhere near how much you have, you know, the weight that you have lost, but what the first 2 or 3 weeks when I start fasting, only eating 1 meal a day, I get so frustrated. I get hangry all the time. My body shakes. I was fidgeting at work, and I was agitated the whole time when I was going through this hunger, angry moment.
I think everybody is so different. I just think it was not a deal. It just was not an issue with me. That's all.
Wow.
It's an issue with you. It's not an issue with me. It's as simple as that.
It took me almost 3 weeks until my body was able to cope with that anxiety.
I hear that a lot. And
so it sounds like the only difference between my diet and your diet is the food that we eat.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind sharing, what do you eat for that 1 meal?
Yeah. Well, when I heard about the carnivore diet, the first thing I said is, this is insane. You don't eat plants. Plants are where all the nutrients is.
How would you describe a carnivore diet?
Well, in my particular case, I mean, I would say meat, eggs, fish, I mean, animal products, right? Right, just animal products in general. So, beef, that sort of thing, right? I mean, when people start asking me about it, I say, just ask yourself one question. Does it come from a plant? Now, the answer is yes, and don't eat it, right? That's
fascinating.
That's it.
Okay.
Chocolate. No, it comes from a plant, right?
Okay.
Can't eat chocolate? I said, yeah, you can eat chocolate, but it's a plant. I said, so, I mean, it's obvious if it's like mayonnaise. Can I eat mayonnaise? Does it come from a plant? The answer is yes, because it's seed oils, right? Sunflower oil and rapeseed oil and canola oil, right? So yeah, I can't eat that, right? Just can't eat it. I mean, we get into something like olive oil, and people are like, "Oh, is that a plant?" Yeah, well, we can't eat it. Well, you can eat it. I mean, I'm just saying, you can be as strict as you want, right? And you can be, if you're not carnivore, right, then you're keto.
So would you only cook your meal in lard now?
Butter. Yeah, lard is too expensive.
Okay.
But when I make bacon, I save the bacon grease, right?
Right.
And then I throw.
It tastes good.
And when I make a steak or whatever, yeah. So yeah, if it comes from a plant, I don't do it. Like, period, right? Like, I'll do eggs and I'll do milk and I'll do butter, I'll do cheese. Yeah. So just ask yourself that, right?
Oh.
The worst things, I think, is sugar and starches, right? So, well, let's put it in this order. Vegetable oil is the worst. Very inflammatory, very harmful, right? Because your body, you are an animal. The fat in you is animal fat. So you should be eating animal fat. You should not be eating plant fat, period, right? It's like mixing alien species together. You might as well be eating Martians or something like that, right? You mean, or Plutonians or something. You might as well be.
Okay.
Because you're ingesting the most foreign situation that's possibly, like, I wouldn't say so much if you eat a potato per se, right?
Okay.
But I'd say if you eat an oil made from a plant, I said be very, very careful, right?
Any plant-based oil? Or any specific plant-based?
The thing is that, this is when science is very handy, right? And they've done, they've looked at like coconut oil.
Yeah.
And they said, you know what, coconut oil is a type of fat that's compatible with our fat. And avocado is compatible with our fat, right?
Right.
And olive oil is compatible with our fat, right?
Pure olive oil.
Well,
most of all olive oil nowadays you get from all the big supermarket chain. 80% of them.
When you buy real olive oil and taste real olive oil, you know that 90% of everything else is not olive oil. Olive oil burns. You take a shot of olive oil and it burns, man. It's peppery and hot, right? And if it doesn't taste like that, then it's not olive oil. You know what I mean? And if it's refined, So anyway, so I got, and it took me a long time, probably 6 months, to get my head in the game about no plants and if it comes from a plant, and plants. The thing is, I think I saw a YouTuber that says plants are trying to kill you. And I laughed about that. I couldn't accept it. Then the more I look into it, the more it's true.
Interesting.
The more it's true, Right. So here's the thing. Once you start like your brain is very, it's hard to change, right? It is hard to change, right? But once it gets changed, it's amazing.
Just stick to it.
It is amazing, right? So once I realized that, yes, plants are trying to kill me. It's true. And so what I was saying is I lost 150 pounds or thereabouts, right, over those 3 years, and nobody said a word.
Yeah.
I went on carnivore for a month, and everybody, to a person, congratulated me on how much weight I've lost and how good I look.
Really?
Yes. And I looked at the scale, and I think I'd gained 2 pounds, right? Like, I hadn't lost any weight.
Yeah.
But they say that you lose your inflammation, right? They say they seed oils and carbs, the way your body processes them, it creates inflammation. It creates arthritis. It creates swelling, you know? And water gets trapped in your body and blah, 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 blah. So the first 30 days, you lose all that.
Do you feel like you're happier when you're on carnivore diet versus plant-based diet or fasting?
I got to say this about that, which is I'm a happy guy, right? But I don't know if carnivore's made me happier.
Okay.
But the stress level is so low. Like, you handle stress so much better. Like, I barely worry about a thing. Yeah. Like, I'm just not worried. There is a huge mental component with that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying that Alzheimer's is like type 3 diabetes, right? You know, you got your type 1 diabetes, your type 2 diabetes. Now let's say Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes, right? So it's some sort of inflammation or some sort of chemical process that wears you down year after year after year with the high sugar, you know? I think it's the seed oils as well. I think the seed oils are much more damaging than they've made out. But definitely, you know, the sugar is definitely a problem.
So do you eat any vegetables or fruits at all?
I mean, everybody cheats, right? Like you know, I think you just have to. We're just human beings, right? You know what I mean?
Sure.
You know, like, but I don't eat any vegetables day to day, period, right? Not at all. I mean, I may have a pizza every now and then, you know, but, and, you know, that's the worst of the worst, right? You know what I mean? It's got vegetable oils.
But just like you mentioned earlier, you spend a huge chunk of time talking about the process of what you eat. Yeah. But eventually another 50% is all about your psychological well-being.
Oh, you have to look after yourself psychologically.
Right?
There's
because
no doubt.
when you're not stressing out from worrying about what you're going to eat or what not to eat, that ultimately help you to feel better.
My stress level is so low. If I do cheat and eat a pizza, my next meal is just back to steak, back to hamburger, and I don't give a crap. I'm just perfectly like, man, I'm not going to have a pizza for a while. Yeah. And I usually eat the pizza. Yeah. And I admit how great I feel. Yeah. Right? I'm like, oh, that was the best pizza.
Is there a certain way you prep your meal?
No. I mean, the thing with carnivore is how simple it is. First of all, you're never hungry, right? Okay. I mean, you know, 20 hours later, you might be hungry, right? You know what I mean? And the cooking, you know, food no longer becomes anything. Okay. It's just like,
but how do you prepare for it?
I have an air fryer.
Mostly
air fryers are great. Air fryers are great. I have a pressure cooker, right? I have the hot pot. The hot pot's good for like big cuts of meat, right? Okay. So sometimes I'm like, I'm going to buy a pot roast and I'm going to throw it in the hot pot, hot crock, or whatever they call that thing. And it's so great because you just close the lid, you throw a bunch of water in there, you turn the thing on for an hour or 90 minutes, and then it's done, you know? And the air fryer is so easy. Frozen steak, you know, throw it in there, turn it on, 15 minutes, done. You know what I mean? That's it. There's no chopping and slicing. None of that, right?
Butter and steak.
Yeah, butter, you know what I mean? Butter. Throw an egg in there if you're feeling adventurous, you know, I'll have steak and egg. You know, throw a hunk of cheese in there. Yeah, you know. It is so basic and so simple. There's no chopping. There's no cleaning.
No.
All of these things are one pot.
Yeah.
And I love it. I absolutely love it, right?
Do you still eat out, though? Or do you just eat out mostly?
I mean, I barely eat out right now. I mean, like me and my friend want to go for dinner, and we got two choices. There's a German restaurant, and it's going to be like schnitzel. I've already told the lady cooking lard, and we're going to go to a steak place, right? And that's it. That's all I can eat now. You know what I mean? I can't eat Chinese, can't eat Vietnamese. These are some of my favorite foods. You know, can't eat Mexican food. You know,
so no noodles, no rice,
no taco, no corn, no oils, and no beans. It's just that everything is off the meal. You walk into the Safeway, the Save-On, wherever you're going to out here, these stores, and there's only two things. There's the dairy aisle and the meat aisle. That's it. It's the only two places you can eat food.
Yeah.
And I do think that fruit at its peak ripeness is probably the best cheap food that you're going to get, right? You're fine on that. You know what I mean? So if I'm gonna grab a cheesecake, I'll probably say maybe I can buy a couple of pounds of cherries instead. You know what I mean? I think carnivore might be difficult for a lot of people, and they may feel less healthy. I just want to tell people that.
But
not everybody's the same.
Important. It's not only your physical well-being, but also you mentioned it makes you less stressful.
The stress level being low is like crazy.
Yeah,
crazy. I mean, I'm not an anxious person, but I still feel stress, right? I still worry. You know what I mean?
That means you're a human being.
I guess that means I'm a human being. But I worry so less now, less. And I think this inflammation, this water that when I'm 64, I'm going to, people get arthritis and joints get stiff and what. Anyways, the first 30 days, like I say, everybody just raved about how great I look.
Yeah.
I lost any sort of inflammation or any heaviness feeling or any joint pain or anything, right? I mean, losing all of that inflammation is just crazy. I mean, I would get blood tests and they would do my C-reactive, right? And it was always like 10, 12, 14, right? Which is way the heck up there.
Okay.
Now it's down to, I think the latest one was 7 or something like that, right? Which is still on the high side. But it's better than 14.
Oh, 100%.
So I'm losing a lot of arthritis, I think. I think my arthritis is going away. I think sugar and seed oils causes arthritis. It causes Alzheimer. It causes your blood vessels to get injured, right? This is what's causing all the chronic illnesses, right? It's if you just go on carnivore, then all these chronic, everybody's different, but most of the chronic conditions will disappear. Diabetes will disappear. Heart disease will disappear. Alzheimer's will disappear, right? All these things will just disappear.
Yeah.
So I'm never going back.
What would be number one mistake that you have made so profound that you actually wish upon someone to experience it at least once and then done with it?
By the time you're 60, you've made all the mistakes. I haven't made any mistakes since I'm 60, so it's been 4 years. I haven't made too many mistakes. But I think previous to that, it was, like using my willpower. Using my willpower to lose weight. Okay, so this is what happens. You have to get into a schedule. I mean, I don't know. You need to join a gym and go every day, right? You have to schedule. You have to get rid of the willpower element of the whole thing, right?
You have to put yourself in a situation where you follow a process.
Yeah, and if you fall off, it's like you're back on it the next day, sort of thing, right? Making a schedule, having places to put things, be organized, right?
Creating a habit,
I've decided to say, okay, this is what we're doing, and the habits are going to go with it, and the education's going to go with it.
So you know your body a lot more than you used to.
Yeah, and take your health very, very seriously. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
Richard, it's been a very, very fun conversation, and I learned so much from just talking to you. And I wish anybody, if you have any questions, feel free to email here, and Richard and I will try to answer any questions you may have.
I hope you enjoyed watching Rich's story. Would you like to hear another inspiring story of resilience and transformation? Check out Ted Soria's powerful story about overcoming addiction and staying sober for 28 years. Discover how he beat the odds and built a life of sobriety and purpose. Check it out.